The rain pounded relentlessly over Pittsburgh, its sound reverberating off the metal rooftops of the industrial district like nature's warning. It was well past midnight, and the streets were eerily quiet. Jake, a 29-year-old mechanic, locked up his garage after another exhausting day. His hands were stained with grease, his jacket drenched from the storm. As he stepped into the alley, a faint sound broke the silence. "Help! Please!" Jake froze, his heart racing. He hesitated, then cautiously made his way past a dumpster and around the back of the garage. There, chained to a rusty iron fence, was a girl, her clothes soaked, her body shivering uncontrollably. Her face, hidden behind wet hair, looked like something out of a nightmare. Raw, vulnerable. A thick iron chain bound her to the fence, its cold steel a grim reminder of her captivity. "Who did this to you?" Jake asked, kneeling beside her. She coughed weakly, her voice trembling. "I don't know who you are, but please. If you don't help me, I'll die here." Jake's instincts kicked in. His eyes scanned the empty alley, his heart pounding. No one was around, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Something wasn't right. "I escaped," she whispered, "but they found me again. Please. I don't have much time." Without another thought, Jake grabbed a crowbar and pliers from his bag, his hands moving quickly to cut the chain. The lock fell with a loud clink, and she collapsed into his arms, her body ice cold. "I got you," Jake muttered, lifting her up. He carried her back into the warmth of the garage, slamming the door behind him. He placed her on a padded bench, then grabbed a clean towel, drying her off with surprisingly gentle hands. "I don't even know your name," Jake said, his voice quiet. "You don't want to know," she whispered, her eyes full of exhaustion and fear. "If you know, they'll come for you too." Jake wasn't intimidated. "Lady, you showed up chained in the rain. They've already made it my problem." She gave him a faint smile before coughing again, the pain evident in her fragile frame. He wrapped her in a blanket and handed her a mug of lukewarm coffee. As she sipped, he couldn't help but notice the way her hand trembled, as if she had never been allowed peace. For a long moment, the room was silent, save for the soft hum of the heater and the rain tapping against the roof. Jake watched her, wondering what kind of life she had lived to bring her to this point. But the questions she refused to answer kept gnawing at him. Finally, as her eyes began to droop, she fell asleep, her head leaning against the side of the bench. Jake's gaze lingered on her, his mind spinning with questions he couldn't ask. As he stood up to check the garage, he promised himself one thing. Whatever this was, he wouldn't let her face it alone. By morning, the storm had slowed to a drizzle, and the gray light filtered through the dusty windows of Jake's garage. The faint smell of oil and grease lingered in the air. Jake poured himself a cup of steaming coffee, his hands still slightly shaking from the events of the night before. He glanced at the bench where the girl, Sarah, had slept, her body now stiff with exhaustion. She stirred, blinking against the dim light, confused and disoriented. Her eyes darted around, taking in the surroundings. Jake walked over and gently handed her a mug, careful not to startle her. "It's hot." "Careful," he said softly. She took the cup, her hands trembling as she held it. "Thanks," she whispered, her voice still raw, as if the night had drained her of more than just her physical strength. Jake didn't know what to say, so he waited, sitting across from her and watching her with quiet concern. The silence stretched between them until he finally broke it. "We should call the cops," he suggested, trying to be practical. Her reaction was instant and panicked. She shot upright, nearly spilling the coffee from her hands. "No," she said, her voice tight with fear. "No police." Jake frowned. "Listen, I don't know what's going on, but you can't just hide here forever. You need help." She shook her head, her face drained of color. If I go to the police, they'll find me. They'll kill me before I even have a chance to say anything. Jake sat back, stunned by her fear. Who are these people, Sarah? He asked, his voice softening. Sarah lowered her gaze to the mug in her hands, gripping it tightly, as if it was the only thing holding her together. The hoodie she wore slipped slightly, revealing dark bruises on her collarbone. Jake's breath caught in his throat as he pointed to the marks. Is that from last night? She pulled the fabric back quickly, her fingers trembling. She didn't speak, but the tremor in her body told Jake everything he needed to know. He leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. Who did this to you? Sarah swallowed hard, her voice breaking as she spoke. I can't tell you everything, not yet. But there are powerful people after me. If they know I'm alive, everything I'm trying to protect will be gone. Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing what she had just said. He wasn't sure if he should push further or just let her be, but something deep inside him stirred, a protective instinct he hadn't felt in a long time. He could see the fire in her eyes, the strength that lay beneath her fragile exterior. He couldn't just turn his back on her. Whatever it is, Jake said finally, you're safe here. For now. She looked at him, surprise flashing across her face. Why are you helping me? Jake shrugged, heading toward a workbench. You looked like someone who needed help. That's enough for me. Sarah didn't say anything more, but the weight of his words seemed to settle around them. She sat in silence, her eyes scanning the room, always alert, always on edge. Jake watched her from the corner of his eye, unable to shake the feeling that this wasn't just some random act of kindness. This was bigger than both of them, and neither of them was ready for the storm that was about to hit. Later that day, as Jake worked on an alternator in the back of the garage, his mind wandered back to Sarah. Who was she really? And what had she gotten herself into? Just then, the phone call changed everything. The neon lights of the gas station flickered dimly under the gray Pittsburgh sky. Jake wiped the sweat from his brow, the scent of gasoline lingering in the air. He'd just stepped out to grab some oil when he heard a voice, low and urgent, coming from behind the side wall near the ice machine. She's still out there, the Sterling girl. I don't care how, just find her. Finish it before anyone hears a word. Jake froze, his gut tightening. He moved closer, hiding behind a vending machine as a man in a black trench coat spoke into a burner phone, his voice sharp with frustration. No, she escaped. I don't know how. Just handle it. No witnesses. Jake's heart raced. He recognized the name. Sterling. The same name Sarah had mentioned the night before. He returned to the garage in a daze, his mind reeling. When he walked in, Sarah was sitting on the old couch, wrapped in a blanket. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with dread. They know, Jake said quietly, stepping toward her. I overheard someone, a man on the phone. He was talking about you. He said your name, Sterling girl. He said they had to finish it. Color drained from Sarah's face. Her hand flew to her mouth as the weight of Jake's words sank in. Her worst fear was here. Who are they? Jake asked, urgency in his voice. They'll kill me, Sarah whispered, her eyes pleading. If they know I'm alive, if they know about the records I have, everything I've been trying to protect, it's over. Jake's mind raced. She wasn't just running from some random threat. Whoever these people were, they had power, and they would stop at nothing to silence her. But Jake couldn't let that happen. Not on his watch. I'm not going to let them take you, he said, his voice low and firm. Whatever this is, we end it tonight. They left the garage together, sneaking through the alley as the storm picked up once again. Jake had one hand on the wrench tucked in his belt, ready for anything. Sarah held a crumpled map in her trembling hands, the ink beginning to blur from the damp air. The warehouse loomed ahead like a dark shadow, its peeling metal walls and shattered windows a silent witness to what was about to unfold. They made their way inside, the hinges of the side door groaning as they slipped through. The darkness swallowed them whole, their breaths forming clouds in the cold air. Sarah pointed to the far side of the warehouse, behind a row of crates. "The USB is hidden there," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But before they could reach it, the silence shattered. Glass crunched underfoot, and Jake spun around, instinct kicking in. A bullet tore through the air, missing Sarah by inches. Another one struck the concrete wall just beside Jake's head. Without hesitation, he lunged forward, swinging the wrench with all his strength. It connected with a sickening crack, and the attacker dropped to the floor. Sarah dove for cover, her breath ragged. Two more figures appeared from the shadows, guns drawn, shouting orders. Jake grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her up, yanking her toward the door. "Run!" he shouted. They sprinted through the warehouse, ducking under chains and broken scaffolding as gunfire lit up the dark corners. The attackers were hot on their heels. Jake spotted a door up ahead and shoved it open with his shoulder, bursting into the night air. They stumbled onto a gravel path, the sound of footsteps pounding behind them. A shot rang out and Jake gasped as the bullet grazed his arm. He staggered but kept moving. "I'm fine," he gasped, blood soaking through his sleeve. "Keep moving." They found shelter in an old maintenance tunnel, hiding in the darkness as Jake's breath grew shallow. Sarah knelt beside him, her fingers trembling as she tried to stop the bleeding. "You need a hospital," she said, panic rising in her voice. "No hospitals," Jake muttered. "No cops. We're not done yet." He leaned forward, his voice steady despite the pain. "We need that USB. We end this tonight." With a nod, Sarah wiped the tears from her eyes, the weight of everything settling on her shoulders. "I didn't think anyone would fight for me. I didn't think I mattered that much." Jake took her hand, his grip firm. "You matter to me." They both knew the stakes, but together they would face whatever came next.